We start with the Lasker Trap. White begins with pawn to d4, and black replies with pawn to d5. White plays c4, and black e5, offering a gambit. White captures the e-pawn, and black responds by pushing the d-pawn forward to d4. White challenges the pawn by moving their e-pawn to e3, opening lines for their bishop and queen. Black gives a check with the bishop on b4, and white blocks the check by moving their bishop to d2. This is where the trap begins. Black captures on e3 with the d-pawn, sacrificing the bishop to gain tempo and set up a deadly trap. If white gets greedy and captures the bishop, black marches the e-pawn forward, checking white's king. If white takes the pawn, he will lose queen instantly. If he tries to just step forward, you promote the pawn. Instead of choosing a queen, black promotes the pawn to a knight, delivering a check to white's king. If white's rook takes the knight, black responds with the bishop to g4, skewering the king and queen. Alternatively, if white's king moves, black is in a winning position with material and attacking chances. This trap showcases the power of tactical sacrifices. Next is the elephant trap, a clever idea from the Queen's Gambit declined. White begins with pawn to d4, pawn to d5. White plays pawn to c4, and black supports the center with pawn to e6. White develops their knight to c3, and black plays knight to f6. White pins black's knight with a bishop to g5. Black develops another knight to d7 that if white captures the pawn on d5, black recaptures with the e-pawn. If white then captures on d5 with the knight, thinking he won a free pawn, you just take the knight with one of yours. White takes the queen as he thinks you just blunder it, but you spring the trap with the bishop to b4, giving a check. White's only legal move is to block the check by returning their queen to d2, which black captures with the bishop. After the sequence, black is left up a piece with an easily winning position. The Old Benoni Defense also has a sneaky trap. Black challenges white's center immediately by playing pawn to c5 after white plays pawn to d4. If white accepts the gambit and captures on c5, black pushes the e-pawn forward to e6. White often tries to support their extra pawn by pushing b2 to b4, but black strikes back with pawn to a5. When white pushes the pawn to c3 to support the b-pawn, black captures on b4 with the a-pawn. If white recaptures with the c-pawn, black develops the queen to f6, attacking the loose rook. This leaves white in a difficult position, as the rook cannot be saved without losing significant material. This trap starts with white playing pawn to d4 and black replying knight to f6. White plays pawn to c4, and black counters with pawn to e5, entering the Budapest Gambit. If white captures the e-pawn, black develops the knight to g4, targeting the e5 pawn. White develops their knight to f3, and black plays knight to c6. White develops their bishop to f4, and black gives a check with the bishop to b4. White blocks the check with the knight to d2, seemingly developing pieces normally. Black now plays the sneaky move queen to e7, setting up the trap. If white pushes the pawn to a3, attacking the bishop, black plays knight takes e5. If white captures the bishop on b4, black finishes the game with knight to d3, delivering a smothered checkmate. This sequence demonstrates how the Budapest Gambit can lead to spectacular tactical finishes. The second trap in the Budapest Gambit starts the same way. White plays pawn to d4, and black replies knight to f6. White plays pawn to c4, and black pushes the pawn to e5. If white captures the e-pawn, black develops the knight to g4. White develops their knight to f3, and black pushes the pawn to d6, attacking the e5 pawn. If white captures the d6 pawn, black recaptures with the bishop. White often tries to attack black's knight with pawn to h3, but this is where the trap begins. Black sacrifices the knight by playing knight takes f2, forcing white's king to capture. Black then plays bishop to g3 with check, deflecting the king. When white captures the bishop, black's queen swoops into d1, winning the queen and leaving black with a decisive material advantage. This trap shows how black can use clever sacrifices to dominate the game. The third trap comes from the Fajerowicz variation of the Budapest Gambit, where black takes a slightly riskier but aggressive approach. White plays pawn to d4, and black responds with knight to f6. White plays pawn to c4, and black counters with pawn to e5. If white captures the pawn, black plays knight to e4 instead of g4. White might try to push the f-pawn to f3, attacking black's knight. In response, black plays bishop to b4, giving a check. If white blocks the check with the knight to d2, black delivers another check with the queen by moving it to h4. White's only legal move is to push the g-pawn to g3, but this allows black to sacrifice the knight on g3. After white captures the knight, black's queen takes on g3, delivering a checkmate. This trap is more daring than others, but rewards black with a beautiful finish if white is unprepared. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing because new chess lesson under 5 minutes is coming up every week.